Hey, Larry Mednick, covering some basic pattern airport procedures today. And so I got a couple of guys here. So this is kind of the stuff that we talk about. This is real basic information. So first thing we're going to talk about is the pattern. So every runway has a pattern. We've got, I'll use a darker color here. We got a runway. We're not even going to name this runway just yet, but that's our runway. And each runway you can use in either direction. So you can take off going this way, or you can take off going this way, right? A standard pattern, if everything's standard, and we'll get into what a non-standard is that you're going to be making left-hand turns, making left-hand traffic. So what does that mean? At an uncontrolled airport like we are here at Zephyrhills, we are going to make a rectangular pattern. So if we take off from this point here, we're going to be on what's called the departure leg here. Then we're going to turn, and when we make this turn, roughly, we're going to call that our crosswind. That is our crosswind turn. Now, a lot of my students will realize that somebody else is talking on the radio, could even be at a different airport, and they'll either hit the button and talk over the other person, which means nobody hears anybody half the time because it's called stepping on somebody. So you don't want to just hit the button because you need to turn. You can make the turn, you can talk later. You are not asking for permission to make these calls. What these calls are for is for people to find you, to know where you are, to let them know that you're at the airport and how you're sequenced with the other aircraft. So this is going to be where we would call that we're turning crosswind. And then we are going to come out here, we're going to continue along, and then we're going to turn downwind. And we're going to stay on downwind. And this downwind should be parallel to the runway. Okay, so that's the first thing. And that pattern elevation is going to be typically at 1,000 feet, but we're going to use something called an airport facility directory. If you're going to an airport you're not familiar with at any time, you want to crack open the airport facility directory, or it's an AFD. I believe each state has their own, so you'd get a Florida book and you'd look up Zephyrhills towards the end in the Z's, and you would see things at Zephyrhills that would say, hey, we've got runway 5 and we have runway 23. So that would be one of the things. It would tell you that this runway is 5,000 feet long. It would tell you that it's 100 feet wide. It would tell you that it's asphalt. It would tell you that there is a tower over to the northwest that is 400 feet tall. It would tell you that we have skydiving operations at the southeast corner of the field. It would also tell you there's an additional runway of runway 1 and runway 19. So it's going to tell you what runways are at the airport. It's also going to tell you if you have a standard pattern, which is just to the left, and it may or may not even mention that. I'd have to actually look, but it'll let you know if there's a non-standard pattern. And a non-standard pattern just means it's not to the left, it's to the right.
Just
Question, yeah.
how is it actually on the 360 with the actual runways? I know that's not the
We're
scale.
just starting to have the
Yeah, so
conversation
to
about it.
scale, this is out of scale. So when we talk about the directions, to answer that, you've got your compass rose, and you've got your north is at the top, south is at the bottom, and then remember it kind of always says west, east, right? So starting at the top, you're either at 360 degrees or you're at 0, take your choice, but south is 180 degrees.
Okay.
West, 270, east is 90. And so runway 5, by the way, is closest to 50 degrees. The runways have the 0 missing and they're rounded to the nearest 10 degrees. Runway 5 is 50 degrees. 50 degrees is this direction here. And so when you're in your aircraft waiting to take off, your compass is going to basically say around 50 degrees. It might be 45, might be 46, but you're taking off on 5 at 50 degrees. Your compass says 50 degrees, and the winds are always reported out of 50 degrees. They don't tell you the direction the wind is going, they tell you where it's coming from. So you're matching up your compass and your runway, and your winds should all coincide. You shouldn't have like different numbers, unless you have crosswind or something. So runway 1 is illustrated correctly in my diagram, since I didn't put a lot of thought into it here. Runway 1 is 10 degrees, so it's almost north. Runway 1. Runway 5 is to the northeast, but that's what the runway numbers are. And so if you notice, 5 is 50, 23 or 23, we never say 23, is 230 degrees. Well, 50 plus 180 is 230, 230 minus 180. 10 plus 180 is 190. So runways are always going to be 180 degrees off because it's the same runway, just the opposite direction. So at Zephyrhills, just a quick diagram, is you have a runway this way and a runway this way. So runway 1 would be here, runway 5 would be here, runway 23 would be here, meaning this one, and runway 19er would be this one, going this direction. So that would be which runways they are based on our map. Okay, and so if somebody says they're coming in, and we're going to get into this, let's finish up this pattern just real quick, but that's an excellent question. Why are they named these different ones? And so as I was saying, the pattern altitude is going to be in the airport facility directory, so you're going to want to know that information. And so as we get over the top of the tower, which we know is 400 feet, so it shouldn't be a factor unless you're a helicopter, or sometimes ultralights will fly a lower pattern. This could be very, very important information to know. And so now we're going to turn. Anybody know what this one's called?
It would be the base leg.
Base turn, yes sir. And then I think everybody watching this video probably knows this one, and that one is called final. Now let's add a little bit more to the equation. This is not just a crosswind turn, it's a left crosswind turn because we're making left-hand turns. This one not as important as this one, but it tells everybody that we're not going this way. Okay. When I call a left downwind, that means that I am over in this area here. If you hear somebody calling that they're on a right downwind, turning right downwind for runway 5 in this example, that means that they're over in this area here. They're nowhere, they're on the other side of the field. And so that's where you get into left and right, and the reason that we're calling out left downwind and not just saying downwind. So we're on a left downwind. We're turning left base. Now, who could tell me why we don't say left final? Never say left final, don't say right final. Why? Because it doesn't matter if you came in this way or you came in this way. When all we're doing is announcing a position, and also that is going to tell us the direction we're going. Doesn't matter if you came from a right base or a left base, final is always final. Therefore, we are saying as little as possible on the radio to keep the chatter down, because you know what? You're trying to say your thing and somebody's waiting to say you're calling final. This guy's waiting to call that he's turning downwind. And if somebody else is coming in on a 45 degree, which we'll get into in a second, he needs to really be announcing that. So we need to get on the radio and off the radio. We don't need to tell this guy he's got a nice plane waiting to take off. We're keeping it short. And so when we start to talk about radio calls, there's basically a few things that we're going to be doing. One is we're going to say where we are. And when you hear somebody talk, there's only usually a handful, 2, 3, sometimes more maybe, different airports on a particular frequency. So the first thing you need to say is where you are. And that's going to be the name of the airport. In this case, we are at Zephyrhills, Z-Hills. That's the first thing that you're going to say. And anybody that's at this airport should be saying Zephyrhills as the number one thing to say. So if you hear DeLand, just disregard the rest of it. It's not for here. Next, who are you? What are you? So number 2 is what? And in this case, we can say Revo or Trike or whatever it is that you want to be. You can be a Cessna. As far as the N number goes, you'll hear, a lot of Cessnas are announcing the whole number, and that's textbook. That's great. I think you'll see when we have more than one Revo in the pattern. Now we've got a yellow Revo, we've got a red Revo. I think it works a little bit easier if we start saying 444 Echo Victor Revo, and then the other one's 5582 Revo. I don't know that that's particularly helpful, so we're just going to use colors Or we're just going to say our model, and that's going to be it. We're not going to use the word light sport, but if you want to say light sport Revo 444 Echo Victor turning, that's fine, but you're taking up radio time for somebody else to be speaking, and you're tying up the radio a little bit. So we're going to be quick. And one of the other things that people tend to do is they'll say, this is Revo. We don't say this is. So Zephyrhills Revo. And now we're ready for the next thing. We're not completing a whole sentence structure. You're just saying what's important. So now the next thing is where. Where are you? Number 3 is where. And I'm just going to put the word where, because that is obviously going to change depending on where you are. So I'm not going to say final or left downwind or whatever, but that would go here. Zephyrhills Revo turning left downwind. Now the runway. That's your runway. And if we're using runway 5, that's going to be Zephyrhills Revo turning left downwind, runway 5. And then once again, the last thing that we say, our location again, in case somebody missed it. And there it is. 5 steps to make a radio call. That's all there is to it. So Zephyrhills Revo turning left downwind, runway 5, Zephyrhills. That's it. And now what's cool is you memorize these 5 things, you can talk on the radio. And when somebody makes a radio call, you know that they're going to say those 5 things. The thing that makes it so difficult is people hear chatter. I don't know what that guy said. But if you know that the first thing he's going to say is the airport, you can hopefully decipher if he said DeLand or Zephyrhills. That's different enough, even if he mumbles it or mispronounces it. And even sometimes I get that wrong. But at least I know the first part was the airport, which is probably the hardest one. But then he's going to say it again at the end. So if I missed it, I'll listen till the end and I'll know where he's at if it's even here at this airport. The next one is the type of aircraft. Why is that important? Well, it's important for a few reasons. One, you got 4 aircraft in the pattern. Well, you need to know how many different planes there are. So you have a Cub and a Revo and a Citation and a Cirrus. You need to keep track that those are all different entities, and the guy that just turned base and a different guy turned final is different than the guy that turned base, turned final 4 seconds later. Or maybe they're in a collision path. I've had that happen, absolutely. And one guy gets ready to turn final and the other guy already called final, and 2 guys are in the same place. It happens. But the most important thing is you want to build a visual picture of who's in the pattern and where they are. And then you know when you hear Cirrus is turning left downwind for runway 5, you know most likely the next thing you're going to hear is that he's turning base. So you're kind of ready to hear that anyway. And so when you know that you're going to hear these 5 things, you know if you miss the first one, it's not the end of the world because he'll say it again. If you miss the second one, it's not that big of a deal because the only other importance of knowing what type of aircraft it is that you're hearing is what their speed is. Speed. Okay? So, couple of aircraft, you don't have to know them all, but here's what you do have to learn. You have to learn Lear, Citation, and there's a handful of others, but Lear and Citation are the 2 big ones. Those are personal exec jets. We fly with them here at Zephyrhills often. A funny story is we did have a Challenger announced one time, and he was on a 2-mile final. Well, a Challenger is a home-built style experimental ultralight 2-stroke powered wonderful little airplane, cruises about 60 miles an hour. A Challenger is also a twin engine large jet, bigger than most Citations. Well, it was that one, and we had a problem. And so sometimes, you know, if the speed is very important. When some guy just shows up and says he's on a 2-mile or even a 3 or 4 mile final, if he says Cessna 152, that's a slow Cessna. If he says Cessna 410, we got to know the difference. And so kind of starting to learn different aircraft can help. But if you don't know what that Challenger is, you could simply say, Challenger at Zephyrhills, say airspeed. Give you a little bit of a clue. You don't know. Or just ask, are you a jet? You know, Cirrus has a jet and they have an airplane. Both are pretty fast. But if you don't know and you think you might be getting in somebody's way, but they're 3-4 miles out or something like that, you can just ask them, say airspeed, and they'll be happy to do it usually. Okay, where? What are they doing? Where are they? That's the most important thing, because we can miss that. We don't know who they are or where they are, but they might be something that's at Zephyrhills maybe. Where did they say they are? And they're only going to say one of 4 calls. They're going to be on crosswind, downwind, base, or final. And so you're waiting for them to say one of those 4 words. Hopefully, if they mumble, if the radio's broken, if you've got engine noise in your radio for some reason, you're going to decipher if they said final or downwind. All right, so as you start to expect them to say different things in the order you know they're going to come, this mumbo-jumbo garble that's very hard to decipher. What did he just say? I don't know. Now you're starting to listen for what it's going to be, and you know what the message is going to be. Okay, yeah. And so really all you're concerned about is who is where. That's all we're getting out of this information. And hopefully they're on the same runway as you. A few weeks back, we had a Cessna come in, and he announced a downwind on 2-3 while I was on final for runway 5. And I said to the Cessna, and I, of course, looked, and I see he's backwards in the pattern. Cessna, we're using runway 5 at Zephyrhills. He said, the wind's favoring 2-3. I said, yeah, we've got 3 aircraft using runway 5 at Zephyrhills. He was right that we should have probably been on runway 2-3, but we started on runway 5 because every airport has a non-wind runway. Why do we have a non-wind runway? Well, you'd have airplanes going everywhere when there's no wind. So to get everybody on the same page, there's going to be a preferred runway to use when there's no wind. And where do we find that?
Airport directory.
Facility director, yeah. So runway 5, but then as the wind kind of started to pick up and I was getting ready to do like 1 or 2 more landings, I wasn't going to switch the pattern and everything. I was getting ready to finish. But you can't just come in, even though everybody else is wrong, and it happens often enough, if the windsock is favoring the other runway, and clearly everybody should be on the other runway. But having said that, if you're in a trike, which is a somewhat wind-limited machine, and everybody's using the wrong runway, and it's getting to be 8, 9, 10, 12 mile an hour, tailwind, quartering tailwind, and you're not safe to land in those conditions, get on the radio. Hey, Zephyrhills traffic, Revo's 3 to the north. We're inbound. Looks like winds are favoring 2-3. I see everybody's on 5. Would you mind switching it around? Let's get switched over 2-3. I've never been refused. You just have to kind of make it happen. And again, people are shooting touch and goes, tend to just keep shooting touch and goes. And a lot of the faster airplanes, they're not affected by a 10-knot tailwind. You are. So you may have to get everybody to switch over. Here it was the reverse. It was actually a Cessna that wanted to use the correct runway while we were using the wrong runway in our case. And so the most important thing is that you guys are all on the same runway. Otherwise, it is you guys are head-on collisions with each other. So that's no good. And again, the last thing is going to be your airport. So once you understand these 5 steps, it's going to be very easy for you to hear on the radio all of a sudden. You know what they're going to say. You're just trying to decipher one of 4 things they're going to say. But if you don't know what they're going to say and you just hear a bunch of garble, it's just that. It's a bunch of garble. You're still trying to figure out the first thing he said. Now he's rambled off 3, 4 more things, and you just didn't understand any of it. That's why you're having trouble in the beginning. Once you understand what they're saying, then it's real easy. So that you're not going to hear them any better. You're just going to understand better as you get more experience using the radio, listening to the radio. So let's get back to our airport. Let's get this into scale. So runway 5. Okay. Now would the 5 be over here or would the 5 be over here in this example, being as north is up? Are you going to find the painted 5 on the runway here or the painted 5 on the runway here? At the top? So it's going to be here. And remember, when you go to take off and you come out in your little trike, so when you're taking off, you're looking at the number that you're taking off from. And when you're landing, you're touching down on that same number. That's how you know you're using runway 5. In fact, the 2-3 is going to be printed backwards, so it's even hard to read when you're taking off because it's upside down to you anyway. But the reason that this is runway 5 and this one's not runway 5 is that this direction is northeast, which is 50 degrees and not 230 degrees. Make sense?
I understand why that's 50 degrees.
Okay.
That I understand why that's 50 degrees, like we discussed. I guess I don't understand why it's written over. I guess it's written there because that's where you start, or?
Well, when you're sitting here with your Delta Wing you're going to see the number 5. You got your hash marks over here. You got your number 5 over here, and then you got your stripes going. So that's runway 5. And like I told you earlier in the lesson, you're sitting on the 5. Your compass says 5. The winds are hopefully a headwind out of 50 degrees. Everything is all consistent. Everything. You're not having to use reciprocal numbers.
The wind's coming out of 5.
Yes. Yes, and that's why it's reported that way. I always wondered, it's like, why didn't they tell me what direction the wind's going? Wouldn't that make like way more sense? Why is it out of? And I think that really stems for getting everything lined up. The runway, the compass, and the winds are all going to kind of line up. You want the same numbers together. So that's runway 5. All right, so we're going to just, don't worry about the other runway. We don't use it. That's a glider operation, jump plane operation. But we do have the skydivers over here. Okay, and so in our airport facility directory, you're going to find out that we use what's called a non-standard pattern for runway 23. So keep in mind, a standard pattern we'd be making to the left, right? So if I was turning left base for 23, would I be over here or would I be over here?
You'd be near the skydivers.
Be near the skydivers. It would be a left base for 23. And so because of the skydivers, we use a non-standard pattern. And that right base for right-hand traffic is going to be over here where we're good and safe, which poses a new threat, which is if somebody comes into this.
I didn't follow. I'm sorry.
No problem.
So for 2-3, right?
Yes.
Would mean that we're taking off.
Taking off on 2-3.
So yeah. And instead of going left, we would go this way.
We're going to go right, and we're going to go non-standard. We're going to go to the right.
Normally you would go this way.
Normally you go to the left. And the problem is we have a non-standard pattern. Left is going to put you into the drop zone.
I see you have the skydivers. Okay.
So now it doesn't have to be a drop zone. It could be a school. It could be anything that they don't want you flying over, a neighborhood, whatever. They're going to use a non-standard pattern. Other than that, you're going to assume that it's a standard pattern to the left. Now, what's another way? You didn't look at the airport facility directory. Your radio's out. You can't listen to AWOS, which is the channel that gives you the weather and tells you the wind direction. What you can expect to find in the middle of the runway, just off to the side in the grass, is a windsock. And this is exactly where it is at Zephyr Hills. And this windsock is now, let's see, we're going to use 2-3, so hopefully that windsock is going this direction. Okay? And that windsock is not only going to tell us direction, but it's going to tell us velocity as well. But if we fly over the top of the airport at 1,000 or 1,500 feet, we can look straight down onto that windsock, and we're going to know which runway is preferable. We're also looking for other airplanes that might be landing backwards, and we're going to just go that way because we can't even talk to them to turn them around. We're not going to land the right way when we got 4 airplanes or even 1 aircraft that's landing on 5.
But it doesn't tell you which direction to turn.
It does. So that's the next part. The windsock doesn't, but the segmented circle around it is going to tell you exactly which way to go. So what you're going to have is what's called a segmented circle. You're going to have your windsock inside of here, which will go whichever way. And then, in this particular case, you're going to see L brackets. That L bracket looks like this. In fact, I think they're outside of the segmented circle, excuse me. Here, and you're going to see it here. Now, these are in reference to your base to final turn. That's what we're looking at. So if you want to know for 5, we're looking at this one. If you're using 2-3, so the wind is coming this way, it's making our windsock blow this way, then that is closest to runway 23. It's still going to be a crosswind, of course, but it's better to use 2-3. Now we're going to be concerned with this L bracket, and that L bracket tells us that that is a right-hand turn and it's right-hand traffic. So you can fly over with no radio without having knowledge of what direction, and you can get the information next to the windsock.
But that one is for 5.
This is for 5. This is for 2-3.
So for 5, it should be reversed because we do make left.
And again, is that not a left turn to land onto 5? That's a left turn. We're turning left. This is a right turn. We're turning right. This is a representation. So when we turn base to final, does it see how that looks like that? And when we turn base to final, it looks like that.
So it's not a literal L, it's showing you the direction you
It's
should
a literal 90-degree L on
Right.
the ground.
Right, but it's not like one would be L and one would be R.
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
it's showing
No,
you
it's a shape.
I think that was your question.
Is that, yeah, it's not an L. It's an angle.
Well, we flew this morning, for example,
Yes.
right?
We were on 2-3 this morning,
And we flew right.
and we're making right-hand turns,
Yeah.
which is exactly
What
what
that
this
is,
bracket is telling us to make right-hand turns.
Okay.
And so because this is over here, and by the way, we have that other runway, that runway 1 over here. You'll also see we have an L bracket that looks like this and looks like this. And so they're going to be lined up with the actual runway. So there's multiple, but you got to figure out which two of these L brackets is actually in reference to
Okay.
the runway.
Yeah.
But again, this one here is lined up with that, and this one here is lined up with that. And if we used to have another runway here that went this way, it is a taxiway now. And in that case, if they were both left-hand traffic, then you would have another L bracket that looked like this, and you'd have one over here that looked like this. Okay? So all you're doing is figuring out which one's lined up, but more importantly, you can just know the airport. Know that we had a guy come in the other day. He made left-hand traffic for 2-3. He didn't know. He didn't look at the airport facility directory. He didn't do a flyover and check the segmented circle. And he made a left-hand traffic, flew right through the drop zone. Luckily, it wasn't active at the moment. On the wrong frequency. Don't worry, he got over to the right frequency before he left. It was a disaster. And so you're going to deal with that. And so your head's got to be on a swivel. Okay, the radio is great, and it does save lives. But it's you can have somebody on the wrong frequency, and you've got to use your eyes. You got to use your eyes. So the radio is helpful, but it's not a foolproof setup. I'm going to turn it sideways just for ease here. We got runway 5, runway 23. Okay, now we're going to play a game. All right, we got point 1. We got point 2. Point 3. Point 4. Point 5. All right. Let's see. You're going to call out the point that I'm talking about. Zephyr Hills traffic. Revo is turning right base, runway 23, Zephyr Hills.
4.
Correct. Does that make sense?
Right base, yeah, that's 4.
Yeah. Okay. Zephyr Hills traffic. Revo is turning final, runway 5, Zephyr Hills.
1.
Perfect. Zephyr Hills traffic. Revo's midfield right downwind, runway 23, Zephyr Hills.
3.
Zephyr Hills traffic. Revo's midfield left downwind, runway 5, Zephyr Hills.
3.
You got it. Zephyr Hills traffic. Citation. Short final, runway 23, Zephyr Hills.
5.
It's that simple. So that's the pattern. That is it. It is no more difficult than that. And again, if you notice, my radio calls were 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Zephyr Hills traffic, Revo, turning right downwind, runway 23, Zephyr Hills. That's the whole radio call. So all you got to do is learn those 5 things, and you can make radio calls. Now, what's the proper way to get into the pattern, right? We got this nice line going. We got this conga line going. We got Cessna's turning a right crosswind, runway 23, Zephyr Hills. Zephyr Hills traffic, Citation's turning a right downwind, runway 23, Zephyr Hills. Zephyr Hills traffic, Revo is turning right base, Zephyr Hills. Zephyr Hills traffic, Sea Ray is turning final, runway 23, Zephyr Hills. So we're all in this big line. How do you get into the line? Now, you know that I just named off 4 aircraft in the pattern. It's a busy pattern. And they're different aircraft. That was very helpful. And hopefully you kind of remembered it's just a full house. You need to get into the pattern. Maybe you should just wait out to the north for starters. And I have a more advanced video on exactly how I differently enter the pattern with a trike. But this is a basic what are the other aircraft going to do? How should they be entering the pattern? And so the answer is a 45. 45-degree entry. Now, 45-degree entry, once again, by the way, what is our pattern altitude here at Zephyrhills? 1,000 feet, excellent. And likewise, we want to be at 1,000 feet when we're on our 45-degree. And what is the significance of being at 1,000 feet or being at pattern altitude when you're on a 45-degree?
I mean, you see everybody else.
That's right. We're at eye level. We can see each other. If you're at 1,200 feet, all of these guys in the pattern are blending into terrain. Very difficult to see them. Also, you're going to be probably descending on top of them. So if you're in a low-wing aircraft, that's very dangerous. High wings, of course. The high wing is in danger because they can't see up. The low wing can't see down. So we're just going to be all at the same eye level as we're entering the pattern to get into line. So this is a 45-degree entry. And I like to just call this a 45. A lot of guys will say, Zephyrhills traffic, Cessna's on a 45-degree for the midfield, right downwind, runway 23 Zephyrhills. The problem for me with that is that they just said downwind. And remember we had 5 things? You were listening for 5 things? Well, one of those things was downwind, so that must have been where he is. You didn't hear the 45. So just say the 45. When you say 45, it is presumed that you're entering at your midfield downwind. That's where you should be. But sometimes, that 45 entry comes in over here, or even worse, off of the screen. Here's where they should be, okay? But the important thing is, that their pattern altitude, and a lot of times it can be 3 miles out, and so hopefully they're going to say that. And by the way, when you are calling that you're 3 miles out, you might be 2, you might be 5, but you think you're 3. You don't say I'm about 3 miles out. You just say you're 3, and if you're wrong, you're wrong. 3 to the north. You don't say miles, you just say the number. I'm 3 to the north. So when you hear a Cessna say, Zephyrhills traffic, Cessna is 3 to the north on 45, inbound for 23. He's at 0.6. He might be further out, but he's going to be coming in on this course and hopefully coming in for the midfield. And then he's going to make this call, and it's going to be a little bit different. He's not going to say where he is as much as he's entering. So in this case, when you enter the pattern, you're going to say Zephyrhills traffic, Cessna 152 is entering the right downwind, the midfield right downwind if you want, for runway 23 at Zephyrhills. And this can be very confusing because they're making their only left turn into a right-hand pattern. And so you'll often hear the Cessna say he's entering a left midfield downwind for 23 because he's turning left. And he's so used to when you turn left, you say left. So that's a common mistake. The other common mistake you'll hear is you'll hear somebody that's taken off on 23 and they turn crosswind and they call it base. Very, very common. So you can be like over here getting ready to turn base, and this guy over here should be saying that he's turning a right crosswind for 23, and he says he's turning a right base for 23, and immediately you're here at number 4, and now you're looking like, oh, where is this guy? Do I need to extend my downwind? Is he going to T-bone me? Where is he? And what he really meant was, now, if you remember that the Cessna 152 and the only one in the pattern, his last call was final, you look over and you see that he just turned crosswind. Nobody else called crosswind. Guess what? He meant crosswind. So you can find him that way. So now the question is, if you hear Zephyrhills traffic, Cessna 152, sound the 45 for the midfield left downwind runway 5, Zephyrhills, where is he? Which number?
He's at 7.
That is correct. That is correct. So the 45 is 45 to the downwind. It's also 45 to the runway, but that is the correct way to enter the pattern. And then a lot of times you're going to see a lot of non-standard entries. You'll hear Zephyrhills traffic, Cessna is 1 to the south. We're going to be entering the right crosswind for runway 23 Zephyrhills. He's over here. He's going to be, and then at this point he's going to say Zephyrhills traffic, Cessna 152 is entering the right crosswind for runway 23 Zephyrhills. So you're either turning, which insinuates you've been in the pattern, you are in the pattern, or you're entering the pattern. Hey, I'm new, guys. I'm a third plane. There were 2, now there's 3. I'm entering the pattern. So entering is an important word. Now sometimes we'll turn downwind. This guy calls final, this guy calls crosswind, this guy just says he's departing, and I'm over here now by the time I get to talk. And now I'll simply say Zephyrhills traffic, Revo is midfield right downwind, runway 23, Zephyrhills. Okay. So that's about all the calls that you can expect to hear at a non-controlled airport. Of course, my favorite, Zephyrhills traffic, Cessna 152s on a 5-mile final, runway 5, Zephyrhills. And now you've got to figure this thing out, and if there's 4 planes in the pattern, they really shouldn't be doing it, but they'll do it anyway. And then one last one is guys doing instrument training. They're going to, and it gets real confusing a lot of times, you'll be using runway 23, and then they're going to say, Zephyrhills traffic, Cessna 152s on a 5-mile, what do they call it? 5-mile approach. I forget the exact term that they use. Breaking off to 23. So one of the things you're going to hear is it's going to be Cessna 152s on a GPS approach, 5 miles out, runway 5, breaking off to runway 23. And everybody else is using 23. It's like, you don't have to worry. He's aware, but he's setting up, he's doing this instrument approach onto runway 5. Everybody's going the opposite way. And then what he's going to do is he's going to just fly over, and he'll get into the downwind as he's coming. He'll break off and get out of the way. He's not going to even come down below 1,000 feet a lot of times.
And it's called breaking off to 2-3?
Yeah, breaking off the approach to 2-3. That means they're going to pick up that downwind typically, and sometimes they'll say it. You're going to break off the approach on 5, and we'll be entering the downwind for runway 23 Zephyrhills. So they'll come in this way instead of coming in the right way. But it's an instrument approach. They're just trying to get as much practice they can. They're coming from this direction. They don't want to waste the next 15 minutes of their flight not doing an instrument approach. They want to use the instrument approach, and then they'll get into the pattern to land. And or they'll kind of get over here, and then they'll say, okay, departing the pattern to the northeast. The next thing you'll hear, that they're 5 miles out to the northeast on an approach to runway 23. And then that may be a full stop, it may be a touch and go, it may be a missed approach. But their goal is not practicing how to land. This pilot that's working on his instrument already knows how to land. He's working on his instrument rating. He may be under the hood, and he's doing this like as if he can't see anything. An instructor is sitting there looking out, and he's practicing this IFR approach. So that's another thing that you're going to hear. But all in all, everybody should be in the pattern. If they're coming into the pattern, you're going to hear that 45. You know where to look. That 45 here, and you get used to it. It's just one of those things you're going to have to. You do it a few times, and next thing you know, it just starts to make a little bit more sense, and a little bit more sense. It gets easier and easier and easier. And again, if you have a friend, you can practice by numbering a pattern, even on a piece of paper. And then your friend says, "All right, right base for 2-3, go. Where is he? What number?"
Right base for 2-3. It's on 4.
4. Great. And final runway 5. Where is he?
He's going to be on 1.
Got it. That simple. That simple. So I probably left a bunch of things out regarding basics, but that's what you need to know. Any questions? And once you get used to a particular airport, I mean, it just rolls off the tongue. You hear all the time guys will come in from Plant City, and they'll call Plant City traffic, Cessna is on final for runway 5, Zephyrhills. Like, they didn't even know they said Plant City. You just get so used to saying your airport. I've done it too. I've called Zephyrhills up in Wisconsin. You just get used to saying it. But the thing is, you don't want to really work the push to talk, in my opinion, when you're working on your landings, because it is such a distraction. As they say, you hit the little red button and you forget how to fly and you forget how to talk. So once you really got the flying down, as we're getting closer, I'm going to start asking you, hey, what did that guy just say? And hopefully you know what he said. If you don't, I'll repeat it back to you, and I'll ask you, what does that mean? Where are they? Who are they? What's going on with that? And then finally, and this is where you guys are both getting to right now, you're going to be working the radio. And you're going to be making the calls, and again, memorize those 5 steps to be able to call out your position. If you screw it up, half the pilots that are making calls at the radio are new students. They're screwing all their calls up. So nobody's going to judge you. They're going to assume that you're a student pilot, which you are, And so you don't even have to worry about saying the wrong thing on the radio. It's not a big deal. I can always get in there and correct you. I mean, I've even heard some of the instructors call out the wrong runway. Yeah, turn final runway 5, and I mean they're over here landing on 23, and you know, sometimes nobody says anything, or you know, somebody, you mean 23 at Zephyr Hills? Oh yeah, correction, you know. But we get it. You know, sometimes you call the wrong thing. It's not a big deal. You just need to get the practice, and so once you get that push to talk, you're going to be making these calls, and you're going to be practicing, and it's going to actually screw up your flying a little bit. It's going to, you're going to call final, and you're going to do this. Zephyr Hills traffic, Revo's turning final, runway 5, Zephyr Hills. You know, you're not going to get that nice crisp turn that you were used to because you were pushing the button. So, with that said, that's your traffic pattern.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for
Very
watching.
useful.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you'd like to learn more about trikes or already fly trikes, check out trikeaction.com, where the action is.